Here we are, Real Recovery Talk. I am your host, Tom Conrad. In today's episode, we have Benjamin B.
What's happening, everyone?
And then we have a young lady by the name of
Cheri.
Cheri. Thanks for coming on. First things first, if you like this stuff, please take a minute, take 10 seconds out of your day, share it with somebody. Let somebody know about this phenomenal podcast / YouTube channel that you've stumbled across, and it talks all about addiction. And hey, I think your loved one would probably benefit a lot from this. That would mean so much to us. Share it with somebody. And in the end, if you want to reach out to either myself or Ben, you can reach us, Tom at realrecoverytalk.com and Ben at realrecoverytalk.com. What we will do, though, just a disclaimer, is we're going to ask you for your phone number. So if you're not willing or you're kind of skittish about having a phone conversation with us, then we're probably not going to have much correspondence with you. That's just the way that it is. You can't have a deep, meaningful conversation through email. I just don't believe that you can. So anyways, again, appreciate you guys tuning in. And that is it for the homework aspect of it. So Cheri, thanks for coming on the show. I think this is a good perspective for any of our viewers / listeners. Finally going to have a parent on the show that's going to kind of discuss her processes, if you will, and what it's been like having a son that has struggled with addiction for the past X amount of years. But before we get into that, Ben, do you have any comments or anything that you'd like to say?
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to doing this episode. Cheri and I have gotten to know each other very, very well, and she's what Tom and I will call, in the beginning, a helicopter mom. Just hovering over every single move, what's going on. But the cool part about it, I say it jokingly, where to watch Cheri go through the process, and hence this mug here, trust the process. There's a little
Trust
story
the
behind.
process.
Guess who got this for me? Yep. So I was constantly saying that to her. We got to know each other through several phone calls per week during Joey's treatment stay here. And basically speaking, coming to the realization from what I see, I'll let her story tell itself, but the amount of growth that she's had and understanding and letting go, if you will, I've noticed some changes from the initial early conversations that we were having until now. But why don't you go ahead, Cheri? I don't want to get the cart ahead of the horse. Maybe give us a little background on your perception of what it was like, what maybe from your perception, the major obstacles that Joey was facing, whether what drugs he was using. There was some secondary addiction too, I think we can touch on.
Yep. Yeah. Unbeknownst to me, it was hidden from me for a very long time. But, as years went on, things started to get a lot worse, and I started to have little, signs of things. I thought he had just a gambling addiction, and then I realized that drugs were involved too. So that was scary. Gambling is one thing. Yes, money, being thrown out in the garbage, it sucks. But the drugs are what really scared me because, especially right now, I mean, you just take one wrong thing and you're just dead. So, I started approaching him about going to rehab. And of course, he said, I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem. And then eventually it got to the point where he came to me and he said, I need to go to rehab. And then that process started. And that, of course, me being the helicopter mom that I am, I started researching, rehabs instantly. Found the detox actually was the first step. So he needed to go to that. And he knew where he needed to go. He's very smart. And he had been researching too. And I found the West Palm Beach detox. And I just picked up the phone in the parking lot of the supermarket one morning and I called there, and I don't know if I should say his name, but somebody answered the phone and turned out to be a really helpful guy. And he said, have your son call me. And I said, well, that's never going to happen. And he said, just have him call me. He said, I'm just like him. He said, I'm not a therapist. I'm not a counselor. He's like, I'm an ex-addict. I can talk to him and just have him call me and let me explain to him, what's going to go on. And he did. He called him, and like 2 days later, he was on a plane down to Florida, and he went into detox and went into rehab, then went into IOP, then came out, and things didn't go so well.
So let me pause you there, because there's a lot of stuff there that I think we need to unpack. And my first question for you is, what was really your first reaction? When you knew that Joey was in a position of, okay, he's addicted to drugs. The gambling stuff was very apparent, but then the drugs came in. Like, what was your first initial reaction / how did you think, what did you think was the right way in handling this when you first found out?
I just wanted to fix it. I mean, I was absolutely, the fear and anxiety that I had was just incredible. And I just wanted to fix it. I just, I thought if he could just go to rehab, he'll just be fixed, and that'll be it.
And to what measures did you go to try and fix that when you were?
Well, he was resistant to me fixing anything at first. So I really couldn't do anything except just watch him not get out of bed and just, sleep all day. And it was heartbreaking. I mean, my life was in complete chaos. I was completely out of control. I was constantly checking my cameras at my house to see if he had left the house, if he had gotten up. If he didn't, I would run home from work, which was not a short trip. So I'd be anxious the whole way home just to get home to get into the house to make sure that he was alive. I was just in constant fear that something was going to happen to him.
And did you ever at any point instill or try and put forth any sort of consequences when he was living at home with you, or no?
No, I was oblivious to the process, to any of it. I tried, but the things that I did looking back now, I think were more hurtful and enabling than helpful by far.
It's interesting that you say that, because, Ben and I, it's 90% of our job is probably, is dealing with parents and loved ones. And that's why I asked that. Like, hindsight's always 20/20. So we always understand that we can look back at that exact experience and analyze it and kind of understand where we went wrong. And it sounds like, at least from your perspective, if you could redo things, and listen, in the end, he's good now. He's clean. He's sober. He's, heading in the right direction. But we could have potentially bypassed a lot of heartache, a lot of anger, resentment, so on and so forth, had you not done what you should have done, but at least known. Because it sounds to me, and Ben, you can correct me if I'm wrong, and Cheri, you as well, it sounds like you were kind of ignorant to it. You just didn't know, and that you can't be faulted for, because you didn't have anybody like Ben and myself really coaching you through this process.
Right.
And Cheri, hey, listen, from our perspective, if Joey is ultimately going to get the help that he needs, then he needs you as mom need to do X, Y, and Z. It didn't sound like you had that.
No, I definitely didn't have that. I have no addicts in my family. I didn't, my parents, grandparents. I don't have any siblings. Like, this was all foreign to me. I didn't know anything, and I didn't know what to do except keep giving him money, which I thought was fixing things, but that was actually making things 10 times worse. I tried to, get him to get jobs and things like that, but he would get a job for a week and then he would lose that job. And I didn't know what to do. And like you said, I didn't have anybody like you guys or anybody telling me, and I didn't open up to anybody. I kept it all inside. So if I looking back now, if I would have opened up to people, there are a lot of people in my life that have been in similar situations, either addicts themselves or kids that are addicts, that probably could have helped me, but I had to deal with it all myself. I'm a fixer.
Yeah, I'm with Tom on this. I want to reiterate kind of what he was saying with, you really can't blame a parent whatsoever because you don't know what you don't know. And this process in itself, if we can hit home a point real quick, it's so counterintuitive because what are parents here to do? Protect their children.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all there is to it. That is basic nature. And what it comes down to is, you kind of said it, something jumped out to me that you called a gentleman. I know this gentleman that you're referring to very well, that works over at Palm Beach Recovery Center. They're a detox center. But he said something that stuck out to me in particular about, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a counselor, I'm just like him.
Yeah.
And that's somebody that speaks his language. That addict, alcoholic, somebody being able to get on that initial phone call, because it's not like in my case, mom's trying to tell me what to do, and I'm like, Mom, you have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, yeah, he said that to me plenty of times.
But then when I can have somebody who is on the other line with me, and they're like, no, man, I get what you're saying. Yeah, I feel the same way. And here's what I had to change. We speak the same language. This guy that I spoke to, he spoke fluent alcoholic junkie, and I could relate to that. And therefore, it wasn't coming at a place of like preaching at me, telling me what to do. I was like, I relate to this guy. And like Tom was saying, having someone there to guide you, I just want to, if you're just seeing this podcast for the first time and you're in a similar situation, don't be afraid to turn it over to somebody else.
Right.
Because we're not prepared for this. There is no hey, when my kid grows up, hopefully he's a drug addict, so I'm going to go ahead and study all this ahead of time.
Right.
It just doesn't work like that.
No, definitely doesn't work like that, and definitely didn't go anything like that. The biggest thing, though, for other parents when, I was in that position, your kid has to finally want it, though. That's the biggest thing. If he wasn't willing to make that call to that person, I don't know where he would be right now. He was obviously at his rock bottom, and he knew that it was either do this or something really bad was going to happen. He couldn't live the way he was living anymore.
I'm going to call you out on this one, Cheri. You said that if he didn't make that call, you don't know where he would have been or where he would be today. Where do you think he would be?
Probably still at my house.
Yeah. And I think if anything, listen, this isn't, we're not pretending that Cheri has done everything perfect here. And Cheri's going to continue and probably not do everything perfect moving forward. That's okay. So as long as we know and we understand, okay, I now have at least guardrails. I have some sort of insight, because just 5 minutes ago, we were talking about how you were ignorant to it. You didn't know, you didn't really have the input or the feedback from somebody like Ben and myself to really help you navigate that, but now you do.
Right.
And so that's the thing I want to challenge you, that if in fact something down the road does not go the way that you want it to, you're in a position now to where Cheri has to look at Cheri and see how I'm affecting this situation. And I'm obviously, you're on the podcast, so, I'm saying that to you, but I say that to any parent that we're on the phone with. It's at some point in time, what the right thing to do is, what the wrong thing to do is. And it's just like it's up to Joey. He knows he at some point comes to a fork in the road, and he has to make a decision, a right one or a wrong one. Same with the parents, same with the loved ones. Oftentimes, You come to that fork in the road and you think that you're making the right decision in the best interest of your loved one, and when in fact it couldn't be the worst decision in the world. And, Ben and I tell parents all the time that you love them from afar and you kill them up close. Joey had numerous opportunities, or you had numerous opportunities to intervene. But because of your motherly instinct and wanting to love him and do what's best by Joey, caused you to make some decisions that were not good and not in Joey's best interest of him getting sober. Right. And we see that all too often. And it's unfortunate. It's the reality of it. And, so all we can do is really learn from our mistakes and kind of move past it. But, that's all I wanted to say on that. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, it's funny because we go through this with literally every single parent. This is not a unique case. And, I want to throw it out there too, that throughout this process, and maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but we had some microphone issues earlier. I'm not sure if I mentioned it again. We had to reshoot, but Cheri sent me this coffee mug that says trust the process. And on those tons of phone calls that her and I had between each other during Joey's treatment stay, I just kept saying, trust the process, because she would call me with a legitimate concern.
Right.
And oftentimes parents, just to be frank, we do want them to take a back seat, but one thing that does happen, I have to look at the silver lining too, where a client will be telling us one thing here as a treatment team, and on the back end be talking to mom and telling her something different. And so in this case, like when mom ends up calling me, I'm saying in my head, well, this isn't matching the feedback I'm getting from him. What's really going on here? But, what I was getting at is a lot of times there was instances where there was room for concern. But what we have to look for is that silver lining in these instances. And what parents tend to do, which happens at the beginning, is, again, you want to protect them from consequences is really what it comes down to. Oh, I don't want my son to be a criminal. Guess what? He already is a criminal. He buys fentanyl on the street, but what I'm getting at is, this process did not go, quote unquote, perfectly.
Oh, definitely. Not the way I thought it was going to go. I mean, I literally thought he was going to go to detox and come out and just be completely fixed. And he was going to be like, Mommy, so happy to see you.
Well, let me ask you this, because I don't want to, steal the mic from you. You thought he was going to be completely fixed just by going to detox. What things down the road did you find out that he needed to work on from your perspective? Like, what else was there?
I don't know if I could think of one specific thing. I think I just thought once he was off the drugs, he was just going to be, maybe I'm thinking back to him being like a kid, like I just wanted him to be like, I don't know. I just so happy. And, I wanted him to be happy all the time. I wanted him to be, thankful and happy, and which he was. I mean, when he was in detox, when I was speaking to him, he sounded like a completely different person. Like it was, complete turnaround. But as the process went on and time went on, I would see some things that were kind of like triggers, I guess, for me is what it is. I obviously have a lot of damage from this as well. So, the first time, he would maybe just not be like this happy person. I would be like, oh my God, what's wrong? Something's got to be wrong. Something's wrong. Because I don't know. Like I said, I didn't know the process. I didn't know what the steps were. I didn't know what anything was. So it was just,
I think this is a really good spot for me to point out a suggestion to everybody listening. A lot of times we get that, when you have somebody's first time in detox, and this from the client's perspective, you were hearing his voice different in detox. Oh, he sounds like the old Joey again. The client as well is thinking the same thing. I'm the old me again. I'm ready to do this. There is very often on both sides, both the client and the parent, this confidence that tends to be false, because what you're waiting for is what's coming, and the client doesn't know it and the parent doesn't know it. Going to detox, getting those drugs out of your system, I can speak for myself where I had plenty of those, and I'm like, all right, I'm detoxed, I'm doing it this time. What I didn't realize was the challenge is coming. So what I want to throw out to the parents, because we see this all the time, finish the entire continuum of care, from detox all the way through as much treatment as you can possibly get through outpatient to a sober house, etc. Because what we end up seeing so many times is a client will go to like a detox residential setting, and we talk about this all the time, where they're locked in four walls. Of course they're doing great. They are, like, for lack of a better way to put it, in a jail with somebody standing over them all the time, with the nursing staff there 24/7. Of course they're doing well. There's no triggers in there. They're,
Right.
so
They don't have their phones. They don't have anything. Yeah.
But it gives this illusion that they're going to get out and just be fine. The real challenges are coming when they're released from that detox. And the client doesn't know that either. You get this false sense of security and confidence. I got this. And what ends up happening? Mom's like, oh, thank God they're fixed. Let's get them right back home and jump back into college and the flow of life. And next thing you know, they're back in detox.
Right.
So just want to throw it out there. Be prepared. Like Cheri ended up learning, detox is just the beginning. And there is going to be, generally speaking, a lot of times, like a big glimmer of hope right in the beginning, a couple weeks in. They sound like them old selves again. But there's more coming. There's bigger challenges coming down the road.
Oh, yeah, I definitely have seen that. I mean, this has been, actually, it was just a year, a few days ago was when he went into detox. So this has definitely been, a long process. And each step along the way, was something new. So
I think an easy way to explain it, detox is not regular life.
right.
You get out of detox, and all of a sudden, you don't have the drugs to help you handle regular life, regulate your emotions, regulate your decision making, make you comfortable in uncomfortable situations. So how are they going to end up handling that sober without anything in their system is what we need to look at, because that's where the pitfalls happen. So it's not a short process.
No, definitely not. And I mean, and he was in for a lengthy amount of time until, he was not anymore. And that's when the real life happened, and he did end up back in detox again. But, with speaking to him and just realizing now, it's probably the best thing that could have happened to him, because, he really, the second time around, realized, because I think, like what you said before, especially with him, he was one of those, oh, I got this, I'm good. I have all the answers. I'm going to be fine. I could go live on my own. I don't need to go, to this. I don't need to go to that. But, this time around, I think he definitely realized that, the steps are there for a reason, and, you got to work them. And I myself am an Al-Anon person too. That's something for all you parents out there. I wish I would have done that sooner, because that might have helped me in the beginning a lot more. I mean, Al-Anon is definitely a great thing for parents to go to.
I want to take this back to the relapse, because this ties into
Okay.
our conversations that we had. This idea that your loved one's going to go to treatment, stay sober right off the first time. Tom's what we call a one-chip wonder, white chip wonder. I'm a guy, he did it one time. I've been to treatment, I don't know, I never actually sat down and counted.
Wow.
But if you include all the different levels of care and such, it's quite a few times. But with that being said, if I recall, that relapse was devastating for you.
Oh, absolutely devastating.
And I was saying, look at the silver lining, because what you just said a second ago was it was the best thing that could have happened.
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong, it's really scary with the fentanyl out there and somebody using that. But
Yeah. No, I said to my old boss is actually in recovery 37 years. And when I told her that he was back in detox, she was like, that's great. And I said, what do you mean that's great? And she said, that's amazing. She said, just the fact that he was able to recognize it and see and know enough to put himself back in, she's like, that's absolutely amazing. as I was hysterical. So,
Yeah. The primary people that listen to this podcast are parents and loved ones that have other family members in their life that are struggling. So I want to switch gears a little bit and just talk more about you and kind of what are some of the biggest things that you have learned throughout this process about yourself, and like what you would do differently moving forward. And, pretend like you're talking to a relative or one of your best girlfriends that calls you and says, "Hey, my son Frank he's going down the same path, and I know you have experience with this. What can I do?"
well, I definitely learned that I am the biggest enabler on the planet. I would definitely have, from the first time that he asked me for a large amount of money, I should have just said no, figure it out. But, I didn't. He was very convincing, telling me stories and making me believe that, something really bad was going to happen. So, that would have been the first step. I wouldn't, I probably would have made him get out of the house if he didn't go to rehab, the first time that I told him that he had to. But this is all, all shoulda, woulda, coulda, but like you're saying, to say to somebody else, yeah, they're very manipulative, lies and manipulation. And I fell for it. I fell for it all. And I would tell people, don't fall for it. Trust your gut. And if you think that something's really wrong, something probably is really wrong.
Has there been any sort of situation since, he's gotten sober to where you've had a chance, or have you guys gotten into any sort of altercations or arguments or discussions to where you've had an opportunity to kind of take in whatever's being said, analyze it, and make a more kind of constructive decision versus, maybe in the past you guys would get into arguments and stuff and both walk away feeling unheard and, angry and resentful at one another. So how has him getting sober kind of impacted y'all's relationship now, and in particular, maybe your communication?
Actually, this past weekend, we did spend a lot of time together. I came down here and he stayed with me at a hotel for a couple nights, which is something that he would have never, ever done before. And we went out to dinner and out to breakfast and we talked. And I can't say any altercations or arguments. I had probably the best 2 days with him that I've had in a really, really long time. Actual conversation, laughing, just joking about, things that he was doing, being able to talk about it openly, which really, honestly, after the first time he was in, we weren't doing, it was still that kind of standoffish. And, now I feel like he's so much more open. I went to an AA meeting with him the other night, which I couldn't believe that he was, like, yeah, come on. Like, just things have been so much better. And I pray every morning still because I want it to stay like this.
That was so funny. Just to touch on it real quick. God works in mysterious ways.
Absolutely.
Cheri had never been to a meeting down here, let alone an AA meeting. And I didn't say anything to anybody, but I actually had to speak that night. And just so happens, there's Cheri at the front porch of Oasis. I'm like, look at that.
That was funny. That was definitely God bringing me there to watch you speak that night.
So in the end, I think what this whole kind of episode has done, and hopefully what it's done for you, the listener, or if you're watching on YouTube, that you can see and understand that this isn't a situation that you have to go at alone. Cheri is somebody that came really to her own understanding over the course of the past, X amount of months, as to she's just now starting to realize and understand how to navigate this stuff. So you could be sitting at home thinking to yourself, this is all fine and dandy, but, Cheri now has a son that is, sober and doing all the right things, but my son isn't anywhere near this. And, you could be frustrated, worried, that everything is going to just kind of blow up. I say that I want to reinforce that it's important that you recognize that you don't have to go at this alone. There's plenty of resources out there for you. Again, myself and Ben can have the conversations with you, something that, Cheri, you didn't have, for whatever reason. There's plenty of us out there that have been through this, and really make it our mission now to help other people navigate their current circumstances. So, all right. So now I want you to just look at that camera, and I want you to talk to a mom. Her name is Cheri too. It's crazy. You guys have the same name. I want you to talk to Cheri in that camera and just, tell Cheri what it is that she can do right now to help further the process of getting her son help.
Well, I would say the first thing would be to make a phone call yourself and reach out to somebody like Ben or Tom or, anyone that has knowledge of this, and let them help guide you a little, because you probably are doing all the wrong things like I was doing and thinking that you were just doing the right things. And, you'd definitely need somebody to tell you what it is to do, and just trust in yourself. And if you're enabling your child, stop, because that really is the biggest thing. I know it's the hardest thing. I mean, it's scary. It's so scary. Probably the scariest thing I've ever had to deal with in my life. The most, worrisome, scariest thing I've ever had to deal with. But looking back now, if I would have just put my foot down a little bit more, I think that we could have, handled this a little bit sooner, possibly than as long as it went on.
Good. Yeah, said it good. Ben, any final thoughts?
I just want to sum it up. Like, to watch Cheri's growth, like I said earlier, has been absolutely incredible. Towards the end of his stay here, it was these situations are black and white. I let Cheri know, hey, we're actually asking him to leave and be done. We feel like he'll do better outside, moving on to a different sober home outside the umbrella of rock. And she was like, no, oh my God. And 2020 hindsight, when we were talking at the meeting the other night, she's like, oh, him going out on his own was probably the best thing for him. Keep in mind that this stuff is not black and white, just to reiterate what she's saying. Like, what we've gotten good at as professionals, as people in recovery, is knowing every situation, taking those details and figuring out the best course of action. It's not like there's a cookie cutter plan on how to get your son sober. And I want to say this too, sum it up for Joey. He's not here to represent himself. From my perspective, the things that I see him doing, he hasn't been with us for how many months now? At least 2, 3.
I think it was like middle August, probably like 2 months.
Sends me a gratitude list every morning. He has a ton of H&I commitments. He's going to his meetings, proof he's bringing his mother. Working with the sponsor, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I'm still personally tied in with them. I get to hear from him every day. Like, he is absolutely doing the right things. And I believe if he continues doing what he is doing with the service work, helping other alcoholics, drug addicts, carrying the message, he is going to be just fine.
That's all I could pray for. And I thank you so much. Without you, I probably wouldn't have made it through this whole process.
Thank you for the opportunity.
All right, that is it. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Real Recovery Talk. Hope this helps you in some capacity. Like I said numerous times throughout this episode, if you in fact have some sort of situation that you need help navigating, you can email myself, Tom at realrecoverytalk.com, and Ben at realrecoverytalk.com. The emails are right there. I don't really have that bad of a stuttering problem. Anyways, we really did enjoy having you on, Cheri. Hopefully you can come back on and give us another progress update at some point in time. And until then, we're helping you turn your mess into your message. That is it. We will see y'all later.